What if the one thing you said was actually helping you is the one thing holding you back? And that could be your calendar. So today we're going to spend the next 8 to 10 minutes and I'm going to share with you one of the most simple systems and yet likely one of the most powerful ways that you can take back control of your day and then operate with intentionality and effectiveness that actually gives you energy instead of leaving you as a vapor at the end of the day when it's time to come home. Today, we're going to share with you specific systems on how to get super intentional with your calendar. And if you stay to the end, I'm going to share with you a visual example of what the ideal day can look like. Look, this is going to be one of those transformational coaching sessions that you're going to want to take with you, press pause, and then rewind and watch over and over again. So let's get into it. So, why your calendar could be the one lying to you? Now, if you're like me, I resisted operating on a time blocked calendar for the longest time when I got into business because I felt like it was too restrictive. Like, I don't want to have to be told exactly what to do or where to go, whatever. And so for the first couple of years of my business, I did just that. I just operated with like instinct and gut feel. And I thought like, well, if I just do this, I'll fill my day up and things will be taken care of. And I'll put my appointments down on my calendar and then I'll be good. Here's what happens when you don't know what you should be doing. We tend to just make ourselves busy, and that busy work isn't necessarily like meaningful and intentional and purposeful work. And what I found was I felt a lot of anxiety at the end of the day because even though I left the day feeling tired or spent, I never really could see visually or otherwise like if I was moving the needle or doing what I should be doing. Therefore, once I finally submitted, and I think that's one of the key words is like sometimes in order for you to really take control, sometimes you got to submit. And for some of you, that's tough. Right. Like you don't like that word. Even just saying that word, you want to like resist it. You're like, you're not the boss of me. Nobody's the boss of me. I became an entrepreneur to be the boss of me. However, sometimes you got to be the boss of you. And you gotta put things in place to be the boss of you or else nothing's gonna get done. Because if you just do the things that you like to do, 95% of the time, you're not gonna be getting the things done that need to get done. So this one tip is the fastest way to discover if you're building the life you actually want. Now, I had a coach share with me once, and he said, take a look at your ideal client and the world that I'm in the real estate space. We're talking about, homes that are 600, 800,000, $1 million plus. And when you do a great job for these, the payout for these could be substantially in the high five figures. And the question is if you had like a hidden camera following you throughout the day, and it also showed your calendar before you met your client, if they saw how you spent your time, would they hire you before ever meeting you, right? And the question is, a lot of us would be like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure they would, right? And so it's not about what we say is important to us. It's your calendar will let me know how intentional you are and what your goals really are. So let's jump into the big idea. Everyone says they have priorities. However, the calendar is the truth teller. And when we talk about the one currency we don't get back, time is probably the most valuable thing that we have. And if we're not investing our time, we're spending it irresponsibly. If it isn't scheduled, it doesn't happen, right? There was a coaching program that I was a part of that said if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. It's just an idea and not an intention because your ideal life is hiding inside a calendar that you have control over that actually tells you what you should be doing. The lie that we're believing is, so often we say family comes first and health is important. And yet, if I just said, well, show me your calendar, open it up, show me the last couple weeks, it'll tell me what you actually think is important. The calendar is just going to be full of meetings, emails, busy work, social media. And the truth is your calendar reflects your current values, not your stated values. So how do we fix it? The first step is a audit framework. It's just a three-part framework. It's very simple, three parts. Number one, we're just going to review it. No judgment. We're going to go back in time. We're going to take a look at it. And then we're going to measure what we said was important, like what we actually think is important, because that's on our calendar versus what we say is important, and take a measurement and then just make adjustments to realign. These small shifts can make massive lasting impacts in your business. All right. So step one, we're going to review the current calendar. You're going to go back, take a look at Google Calendar, Outlook, whatever you're using as your calendaring system. And here's your aha. If you don't have a calendaring system, there's step one. So if I look back over the last 2 weeks and I said, show me your calendar, and you said, well, I don't have one, then I'm going to also say, well, then you don't really have priorities. and you can fight back and you can push, and yet I don't care. Like, no one who's doing anything is operating outside of intentionality, and the calendar is probably one of the most foundational systems that anyone who's making any significant impact in the world in their business is following. So take a look at the last 2 weeks and ask yourself, okay, where did my time actually go? Take a peek. And then if you were like me in the past, maybe you only wrote down the things that you needed to remember, as opposed to writing down the things and the times that you needed to make sure were getting done. Now, all of you that are watching this know exactly how to do this, because if you're out of high school, you already did this. I want you to think about this. When you showed up to high school, how did you know where to go? You had a time blocked calendar. You knew every single day from this time to this time, it was this subject. From this time to this time, it was this subject. And then the bell rang, and then you had a little bit of buffer time to go through the halls. And then you had study hall, which was flex time. Then you had lunch. Then you had physical education, gym, right? So you had purposeful study time, buffer time, you had flex time, you had physical fitness, you even had like study hall where you could actually like go in and catch up on some things. So those things were in the calendar and at a certain period of time. And then at the end of the day, you knew you were done. And if you executed on that, you could accomplish the tasks, right? So we need to get back to that. So let's take a look at your last 2 weeks and ask yourself, where did the time go? And then what's surprising about taking a look at these last 2 weeks? Like, what's missing? What energized me? What was it on your calendar that like you really enjoyed and like, I would love more of that, right? What drained you? And then what should have never been there to begin with? And then I would like for you to consider, what is the ideal week? And one of the questions you should ask yourself when considering the ideal week is, if I were living intentionally, how much time would I love to have with my family? How much time would I love to have for exercise, for learning something, either continuing to learn what you're working on, or maybe some passion projects, or maybe some things outside of that? How much time would you like for the deep work, right? That personal development that just takes a little bit of private intentionality. How much time do you want with your friends? How much time would you like to have for rest? Are you feeling like you're constantly starting the day, um, below full? How much time for faith, hobbies, or thinking? How would your calendar look different if you got to pick the best calendar for you energetically and then also developmentally? And then you want to give yourself a score. Rate yourself from 1 to 10. How close does your calendar reflect against your values? How close does your calendar reflect against your goals? And how close does your calendar reflect to the person you're becoming? One of the questions that I have everywhere is, am I living by design, or am I living by simply reacting to other people's needs and desires? Let's continue on. Then we're going to look for patterns. So ask yourself, like, on your calendar, where are you possibly leaking time? What areas may deserve some more attention? What deserves less? Are you blocking too much time for something that you're consistently getting done sooner, and then you're having some time that you could allocate to something else? What is stealing your best energy? Like, what are you putting at the wrong times of the day? And then what should be protected? Now we're going to give you some clarifying boundaries and guidelines for this as well. So the task for this week is going to be to build the ideal week. However, we're not going to start from your current calendar. I want you to burn it down. I want you to start from blank, and I want you to consider scheduling some priorities first. Here's what usually happens. Most people start scheduling the things that they should be doing, and then they put their family and personal stuff last. And what I found with most entrepreneurs is many of them haven't had a vacation in years. Why? Because they wait to see when there is downtime to put something down, as opposed to planning their life first and then working around their life. And some of the most successful people that I followed and mentored with has said every year they start their year writing down their non-negotiables for family. Then they write down their non-negotiables or non-movables for work or business. Like, for instance, is there a retreat or a convention that you know is going to help you level up either personally or professionally that isn't going to move? So they put those things down on their calendar after they've marked out, how many vacations and how much time they want to have with their family. And then they start building around after that. However, through the day, like, I want you to also start taking priority into the life pillar, like we talked about last week. We got leadership, love, and life. So first, we're going to be marking down all the things for our personal relationships. Then we're going to go physical and mental health. And then what's interesting is, lastly, we're going to make sure that we really nail the leadership side. So family, health, sleep, Deep work, learning, reflections, and relationship. Everything else falls afterwards. So here's the ideal week in color. If we were going to take a look at these color codes, we're going to be putting the ideal week in these colors. So we've got growth time, we've got health time, and then the deep work is the intentional work that you have in your business. This is the stuff that generally costs the most energy, but moves the needle furthest and fastest, right? We want to get this done early in the day so that we can have the rest of the day to shore things up and to clean things up. Then administrative work, this is the stuff that has to get done in order to continue to get paid and yet isn't necessarily revenue driving activities. And then there's some buffer time and review time. This is that flex space that as things pop up throughout the day or things get bumped or moved around, you've got some buffer time to be able to do so. Like, I'm not under the hallucination that you can have the best intentions, and yet sometimes you've got a client or a situation that comes up that requires immediate attention because ignoring to do so would be irreparable to a customer's situation. It may cost a ton of money or it may put you in a legal situation. I understand that, right? So that we have to have scheduled buffer review time in order to make sure everything continues to get done. So that's in there as well. And then family time. And then what's interesting is there is the red category, the wasted time. And so instead of thinking it as wasted time, thinking of it as unintentional time. And you're like, well, what is that? I want you to actually schedule like junk food time. This is doom scroll time. This is social media time. Like, pick a time throughout the week. And like, I know my picture is covering this part up, but on Sunday, there's an hour time block for wasted time as well. Like, feel free to indulge into something like that at those times as well. Have some time set aside for that. And then lastly, recovery time, right? Sleep and recovery. This again is just an example of what an ideal week could look like. However, some of these might shift a little bit for you based on your particular cadence for your business, right? So this is don't take this as like rock solid, the only way to do it. I want you to look at this as an example of consideration and then ask yourself, if I executed on a week like this, 85% of the time or better, would my life look different? Would my physical health feel different? Would my relationships resonate in a much different way? I bet you they would. I bet you they would. James Clear in his book Atomic Habits has this quote. He says, "You don't rise to the level of your intentions, you generally fall to the level of your systems," right? And your calendar is one of the most important systems that you're ever going to build, right? Our systems are our floor and can also raise our ceilings. So, this week's challenge, if you so choose to accept it, is I want you to complete your calendar audit. Take a look at your last 2 weeks, color code every hour that you have, and then check with your alignment score and see how you fit, see how it comes together, and then identify a few things to remove. What's on there that shouldn't be or doesn't need to be? Maybe it could be an email, maybe it could be a recap. And then I want you to really take a look at what are 3 things that matter most to you that aren't on your calendar and where could they go? Where could they go? Look, I trust if you take this challenge on and really take a look at it, I'd love for you to come back and drop in the comments any of the ahas or experiences that you discovered. See how it has changed things or the way that you look at it. And realize, we don't just manage our time, we design our life. That's what this is all about. All right, guys. This is a blueprint to a life of no regrets, managing your day an hour at a time through the calendar. If you got value out of this, please share it with somebody who you know could use a little bit of help with their calendar. And if you want to continue being in on the conversation, don't forget to subscribe. We'd love to have you be part of the channel to make sure you're getting these updates every single week. And we'll see you on the next conversation.